Hello everyone, Jurassic Fighter here, and welcome back to another Minecraft video. Today I wanted to showcase a brand new Downaccel General Mob Farm concept and layout that I designed. First of all, I just wanted to say that the original concept of using trapdoors as a spawning floor in a Downaccel mob farm was shown by Mr. Francesco 98, and I will leave a link to his video in the description below. The layout that I came up with is a little more dense than his, and I'll go over the main details of it in just a little bit. So the total drops that this farm produces per hour is 185,000. It gets about 57,000 gunpowder per hour and 57,000 bones per hour. Also about 57,000 arrows per hour and about 11,000 rotten flesh per hour. It also produces a few witch drops, but I didn't think those were worth calculating since it doesn't really produce that much. I'd also like to mention that these rates were calculated in the desert biome, and that you'll probably get less of the more useful drops such as gunpowder and bones from any other biome. So yes, I would definitely recommend building this farm in a desert biome. I also want to apologize for any frame loss that I get from running this farm. It's not the most lag efficient, and I will get into that a little later. Yeah, I apologize for that. I'll try to keep it as smooth as possible. Unfortunately, Replay mod isn't out for 1.16 yet, so I can't do a fancy schmancy cinematic, and that is pretty unfortunate, but this will have to do for now. So, like I mentioned earlier, this is a pretty dense layout. In fact, this is the densest Downaccel mob farm layout that I've ever seen, pretty much, although there could very well be a much faster, much denser one that has been made, but as far as I know, this is one of the densest. And like I said, it does use a pretty interesting concept, trapdoors for spawning spaces, which essentially saves quite a bit of room compared to traditional, more retracting the floor-based downwards acceleration mob farms. As you can see, there are also no blocks or solid blocks at foot level, which means pack spawns are working at the highest efficiency. However, in 1.16 they made a pretty detrimental change where pack spawns can no longer spawn past the mob cap. So if we check the mob cap, if I press tab, as you can see, it's not really going above 99, which is the current mob cap. Yeah, it can hit 100 sometimes, but essentially a mechanic that was in previous versions, basically 1.16 minus overspawning, which is where pack spawns would actually allow you to get more mobs in the mob cap because they were still calculated after the mob cap was full. And that has been, I guess, patched or changed in 1.16. Now pack spawns can't really go above the mob cap, which severely limits the rates of this farm. And that's why the rates aren't as good as, say, a traditional 1.12 or pretty much until 1.16 rates of a downwards acceleration mob farm, because yeah, overspawning is gone, which means spawn rates have decreased quite a bit. I've actually tested KK's downwards acceleration mob farm in 1.16, and it gets pretty much the exact same rates. So yeah, even though this is a pretty dense layout, it's not anything special compared to other designs. It doesn't get more rates, but it is a lot more compact and a lot smaller. The KK's design I tested was a full despawn sphere, whereas this is only the spawn spaces are crammed into a 180 by 180 square. So it's a little smaller than a full despawn sphere size farm, and it is a little faster just because of the high density and the no solid blocks at full level, so no pack spawns are blocked. So some caveats about this farm. First of all, it does use a lot of observers. As you can see, there's at least an observer for each spawning space, and the killing floor does use a lot of observers as well. Now, this isn't such a big deal because this farm is a 1.16 farm, and 1.16 quartz is renewable through piglin bartering. However, that is still a pretty annoying way to get quartz, so this might be a major caveat depending on your ability to barter for long periods of time. Another pretty annoying thing about this farm is it does use a considerable amount of dust, and unfortunately, and I'll get into this a little later, but dust is pretty much the only way to keep the farm from breaking. I did attempt more lag-friendlier methods with pistons and dust redirection, but it wasn't able to keep up with the speed of the farm. And like I said, I'll get into that a little later. But essentially what that means is because of all the dust that's being used, it's not a particularly performance-effective farm. If we take a look at the TPS, right now it's at 22, and that's not very optimal. You might get better performance on a server. This is just a single-player world, so my PC isn't the best, and I am recording right now. But yeah, it can get pretty demanding in terms of performance, both client side and server side. Although it's nothing too bad, like it's not an insane amount of MSPT, it's just not as lag-friendly as other farms because of the dust. The last caveat is the fact that mobs spawn on trapdoors in this farm. Now this was around in the earlier 1.14 versions, but was taken out of the game. Now in the 1.16 snapshots, it was brought back in. Whether it was intentional, I still don't know. So I'd recommend waiting until the final 1.16 release before building this farm in a survival world, just because this spawning mechanic might not stick around that long. But it just depends. I don't know if it's intentional or not. I still think it's pretty cool, but I am biased, of course. It's just, I'd refrain from building this farm until we're absolutely sure this is an intended mechanic and won't get patched anytime soon. So I want to go a little bit more into detail about the spawn pads themselves. What happens is when a mob spawns, the tripwire activates and powers these rails right here, which are then detected by the observers, and then they flick the trapdoor. This allows the mob to fall through. Also, the tripwire powers this slime bar up here, which shoves the mobs down and accelerates them faster, and that allows for a shorter lifetime. The lifetime of creepers, zombies, and skeletons is 19 game ticks with the exclusion of the death animation. If you include the death animation, that is 39 game ticks. For witches, it is 40 game ticks, and with baby zombies, it is 28 game ticks. This was my previous module. This is my original one, and I really liked it because it didn't actually use any dust. Instead, it used pistons to turn on and off the trapdoors and the slime bar. The problem with this, apart from having a lower lifetime, is that if mobs spawn too frequently, these pistons could get short-pulsed, and I can't really demonstrate that, but I can do this. So they would spawn so frequently that this would happen, and this would happen, and essentially this would slow down the farm quite a bit. Now, it could get reset if a mob, or this specific problem could get reset if a mob spawned back in, but it would also short-tick this piston right here, which means that this would permanently get stuck as no more mobs could spawn and unstick it, and it's not really practical to hook up a clock to unstick these, if that makes sense, if I'm making any sense. So this was scrapped, and really the only reliable way to make sure that mobs always fell and these didn't get stuck was to use redstone dust. This is 100% reliable. I've tested this for a few hours now, that farm over there, and no problems have occurred, whereas this, yeah, even this was about 10,000 drops less, and it's diminishing at that point because the more you use the farm, the higher chance there is of more spawn pads breaking, and then eventually all of them break, and you just get horrible drops. So you then have to manually reset, and I'd rather have a functional farm than a less laggy one that can pretty much crap out. And as you can see here, it is vastly more denser than KK's and other downwards acceleration mob farms that I've seen, because it doesn't need to make a bunch of room for a bunch of pistons. And you could just check out KK's. I'll leave it in the description below to see what I'm talking about. But no solid blocks at foot level, and it's actually a pretty nice design. It would be super efficient if it wasn't for the pack spawning limitations that 1.16 exhibits. Another thing I kind of want to talk about is the killing floor. This essentially, when mobs fall, this is fitted for most mobs which have 20 health and need a 24 block drop. This is 24 blocks from the spawn platform. However, certain mobs like witches and mobs with feather falling armor survive this fall, and so the pistons push them into the lava, and these pistons also, the observers detect when a mob lands, and these pistons push surviving mobs into the lava and items down into what are supposed to be water streams. I didn't put water streams here because they're kind of hard to manage and hard to paste on a large scale, but you can actually do water streams with this kind of layout. That's what I recommend. It's the most lag friendliest, and it's by far the cheapest way of doing item transportation systems. Unfortunately, yeah, this does use a lot of observers. I would say it's worth it though, because again, observers are renewable, so it's not too hard to get them, and I noticed a pretty significant loss in drops if you just did a magma block floor or wither roses, because witches and mobs with armor last longer. Lava deals more damage and kills those mobs faster. Let me just demonstrate. As you can see, witch falls down and gets burned, and it's actually pretty effective, super fast. So I would definitely recommend you build these killing floors rather than a platform of mob damaging blocks such as magma and wither roses, because it's just, even though it's a little more expensive, the benefits, in my opinion, definitely outweigh the cost. So in terms of improvements, well, for one, this farm could definitely be optimized for multiple mob caps in case you want more rates. I did test the rates of the specific farm with up to 3 mob caps, and the results were promising, but they weren't exactly optimized. There is a lot of room for improvement when it comes to running this farm with multiple mob caps. Another thing you could do to improve the rates is use portals, of course, but I personally don't like portals. I think it's more interesting to create a solution that does not require portals. Portals are kind of easy, they're kind of boring in my opinion, but you could always use portals to boost the rates. And the last improvement that I think is the most needed is definitely performance. Now, again, this farm doesn't break your computer, but it's not the best. In terms of performance, there are much better farms out there that get quite a few MSPT lower than this, so if you guys in the comments can figure out some way to somehow improve the performance of this farm, and by performance, of course, I mean lag, that would be amazing. Please let me know. Again, my attempts have been pretty futile, but maybe someone else can come up with a better solution. But with that out of the way, I would like to thank you guys for watching this video. As always, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and just a note, again, I do have quite a few videos planned. I do want to work on a couple things. It's just been a little difficult to manage all the projects I have. But I promise there is some pretty cool stuff coming along, so just keep your eyes peeled, and I'd like to thank, again, everyone for watching my videos. I really didn't think I'd even get up to, I know it sounds kind of stupid, but 70 subscribers is actually a pretty big milestone for me. I never thought I'd actually gain that many, so thank you all. I appreciate you.